Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Leadership Lanes. Today we have John Crickett with us. He's a London Business School alumni and a fierce developer advocate. His mission is to help developers become better software engineers through coding challenges that build real-world applications. He has held leadership roles in the field of engineering and has been a chief technology officer as well. Welcome to Leadership Lanes, John. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So I went through your LinkedIn feed, and it's a great feed to have, by the way, for someone from a tech background. And I read that you argued against managers who step away so far from the code that they lose track of technology, become ineffective. So can you defend your stand over here? Typically, I know managers at times techno-commercial managers find hard to get out of that technology mindset, and I would like to know your opinion on this.
Sure. So I feel that once you get to a certain stage as a manager, your responsibility is to enable your team, to empower them, to get them the resources and to remove the blockers. And that means you coach, you mentor your team, you find out what's stopping them from being effective, and you naturally step away from the work from that point of view. If you are going back hands on and trying to get down at the coalface and interfering in the work, if you like, you are not giving them the chance to grow. You're not giving them the opportunity to develop their skills. You're not giving them the opportunity to grow and have more impact. And you're not outward facing going, well, they need this resource, they need this training, they need this education, they need this support. We need this part of the business to provide this information to us. You should be looking outwards of how can I get the things that my team need to be effective and to grow and to develop and to deliver their value. And if you're tinkering in the code, you're not doing that. You're letting them down and you're letting the rest of the business down. Now, don't get me wrong, it's great if a manager has an understanding of the technical stuff, but when you get past engineering manager, your job is to be looking out and to be focusing on how do you grow and develop your team? How do you build the next level of leaders behind you? How do you get them the resources that they need to deliver?
Good that you talk about building the team and building the next generation of team. In your opinion, what is the key ingredient in order to, if you were to have to pick just one key ingredient as to what will be or who will be your next rock star in the team, how would you do that?
That's an interesting question. I think that's very situational. It's very dependent. It depends what you need. There have been times when I've needed somebody to, particularly in a small startup, I've needed somebody to step up and be customer facing and go and talk to customers. So the hero of the hour, then, if you like, has been the person that's been comfortable as a software engineer to come out of the office, to travel, to go and see customers and to talk to them and start engaging in a business relationship. At other times, there's been that critical, really difficult challenge or critical bug to fix. And the hero of the hour is the very deep technical person who can jump into the problem, start analyzing it, figure it out, and solve it. So I think it's very situational. And it's going to depend on exactly what you need, which, as I say, it changes over time. That's why you need that
Uh,
mixture and that diversity in the team. That's why we want different people with different skill sets and different outlooks and different approaches.
that's a good take on this, and it's a good point that you bring about diversity, which kind of brings to my next question, and this is again probably a follow-up to the last question. You have rock stars in the team who kind of take or you kind of take the most of the load of the team. Typically, I wouldn't say most, but majority of the load of the team. And as an effective manager, how do you effectively manage such rock stars in the team who kind of are standout personalities, I would say, in the team itself?
Well, okay, there's two different things there. There's the rock star who gets a lot done but is very quiet, and there's the very extroverted standout personalities. So starting with the ones that are very quiet, I try and look for ways to take some of that workload off them and make sure that other people are getting a chance, other people are getting a chance to get some exposure. The rock stars getting a chance to feel that they don't have to carry the world on their shoulders, to getting a chance to share their knowledge or getting a chance to step back and let other people acquire some of the knowledge by taking it on. For the more extroverted, outgoing ones, should we say, that are more vocal, It's trying to make sure that in meetings, yeah, we still have the say because they normally got something useful to add, but how do we encourage them to at times to back off and encourage the other people to speak out? So, find the quiet people in the meeting that may have something valuable and invite them into the conversation, ask them directly what their opinion is. So we challenge, hey, Bob or Sue, what do you think on this? How do you approach it? So in trying to encourage that diversity of opinion and stop those that are too loud from dominating the meeting, bring forward the other people that might be quiet and give them a chance and a safe space to come forward and offer their views.
That's an interesting take. Coming back to the manager aspect that we were talking about earlier, and one question here for you is, what difference do you see in the functionings of a manager as opposed to a leader? And what mindset change must a manager bring in the thought process and the approach in order to become a good leader, in order to progress as a senior manager or a director, or even more like a VP?
Well, a couple of questions there. So pardon me if I don't get them all in
Yeah,
one. Feel free to come back
sure,
to it.
sure.
So I think there's a difference between a manager and a leader, and that leader is very, very situational. Anybody can be a leader. You don't have to be a manager. You don't have to have authority. Leadership is, to my mind, it's an act. It's something that you do. So, if you're out in the park and you want to gather your kids or your friends' kids together and play football or soccer or whatever sport you're doing, anybody can step up and say, come on, let's get together and do this. And if other people get up and follow you, you're a leader. You're creating leadership and it's situational. You can step back from that and let somebody else take over. Again, taking back the software issue, if we get a critical bug, anyone in the team could step forward and take the lead on that and be a leader in that situation, and then can step back into the team at other times. And I think just because you're a manager doesn't mean you have to be a leader. You can let different people in your team to step forward and show leadership and lead different initiatives, to lead different things. And your role as a manager is far more in how do you gather the resources that your team needs. So, there's the software, there's the tooling they need, is the computers they need, is the computing power, is the data, or do you simply need more people? How do you bring together all of that resource to create the team and the environment that you need and make sure that they have everything they need to be successful? How do you arrange that? How do you remove friction? How do you add the right processes and take away the wrong processes? So that's a very different role to my mind as a manager. And again, as part of that, as a manager and a leader, there's a bit of a crossover in how do you develop the leaders of the future? How do you train your team? How do you grow them? How do you coach them? How do you step back and go, well, actually, I'm now a manager. I'm not hands-on. I'm not the expert in Kubernetes. I'm not the expert in, say, Java 18 or whatever it's up to these days. How do I find the right resource, the right person on the team that can coach and mentor you to develop? If you want to become deeply technical and progress to Staff Plus, maybe you're going to get SLE in Kubernetes. How do I find the right person to come and teach you and mentor you and provide you with that growth? Because it's not me. So hope that answers the question.
That does actually, and it's a tricky line between the two because as a manager you're already on path to become a leader to an extent, and it's an interesting take. That's right. Uh, Coming back to the developer perspective, you've been a developer advocate for quite some time now, and this is something which, when I ran my own startup back in 2015, I also faced a lot of, I wouldn't say issues, but I would say challenge to lure engineers, good engineers, to join your startup, right? Whether it is VC backed, non VC backed, pre seed, seed, getting good engineers, trying to convince them, it used to take a lot of my time in order to convince them. And what do you think from a developer perspective is a good recipe in order to convince these engineers to join your journey as well?
It may be slightly different over in the States, but I certainly found that over here, where our conversations, we don't have as big a range. There's maybe a draw in London for a few big tech companies and finance where salaries can be fairly high, but we have a more moderate and more a narrower range for salaries. So the difference for a startup over here is far more about providing something interesting, providing the challenges and the opportunities to grow that you simply won't get in a big corporate. So you join a startup here in the UK, You will get exposed to every part of the business. You'll get a chance to work in a more variety of different technology stacks. You'll get a chance to work with, can we say, more modern approaches. So it can be far more interesting work. And that, I think, makes it a lot easier to sell over here because there isn't the disparity in compensation. I imagine more in the States where some of the startups maybe offer less total compensation, but potentially bigger payout. You probably have to focus even more on the interesting work and the interesting angle and maybe the mission driven, the vision and the excitement that it's going to, and tackling new challenges. And let's face it, a lot of the big interesting challenges come when you disrupt a market. They come when you're doing something new, not when you're a 20,000 person and you're, fixing a small bug in a system that's been going a while and you're doing business as usual. How did you find it with attracting them? What was your answer to that?
For me, the first impression was how do I take my interviews? And if at all they were impressed with the kind of questions I ask in my interviews, that was a good starting point for me to take the discussion further. And money, yes, money is one factor that, and that's why startups typically have to offer more than what established companies offer. And again, as you said, right, if they are on board with the vision, and they feel that the company will succeed in future, then they are ready to take the bet. Although I feel that not everyone will be ready to take a bet because more there will be also considerable percentage of engineers who will say that okay, I'll be okay to get less salaries, but I want stability, etc., which you typically don't get in a startup. And the percentage, the other side of the world is less, to be honest, and that's wherein lies the tricky aspect of hiring for a startup. And you always have to be in that finding mode, like I want to hire my next engineer because I never know when my existing engineers will leave or will join another organization.
I think that's a good thing for everyone to do though, because everyone should be looking for growth, looking to progress, and we should always, as leaders, be looking how can we progress people. In a way, you want to be looking at how can I move people up and out of my team? How can I grow them and progress them and develop them further? Which is good for them, it's good for the business, and it's quite often good for us. So I've been introduced to roles by people I've helped grow. So I've taken some people from junior developer to staff developer, and they've now introduced me to new opportunities myself. So I've helped them grow. It was good for the business at the time, and now it's good for me. So there's a lot of benefit to that. I think the other thing I was going to say is do you see that stability is different these days? Taking it personally, I've been made redundant twice by massive companies. I have never had a startup fail on me. So actually, my experience, which again is now a subset, is that startups have been more stable than big companies.
Yeah, and there are a couple aspects to it. First of all, whenever as a startup you need to fire someone, you think a lot before doing that because there are multiple aspects to it. If you fire a person, then the 10 persons that are there will typically feel insecure.
Yeah,
And then you in a startup you have that personal connect, as you said, right? I mean, you are involved in each and every aspect. In fact, the engineers are involved in each and every aspects. You have engineers talk to UX team, QA team. Typically, that doesn't happen in a large organization. So, I feel that when it is time to fire, startups need to think from a personal angle as well, and that's where lies in your good experience of a couple of startups that you worked with, and me as well. I worked with a couple of startups before I started my own, and it was a good experience. The growth and all was tremendous, and I still have those good relations with them even if it is more than 10 years now. So my experience was good, that's for sure. And one aspect that I saw in my own startup was that as the company grows, the engineers also grow with you, and it's this kind of parallel growth that they have, and that gives you more satisfaction, I believe, than anything else, to see them grow along with the company.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was some of the most satisfying. Well, the most satisfying goal I've had was seeing some junior developers come through, get out there, gain confidence, become better engineers, go out and be customer facing, get exposure to a wider world, gain the skills and grow their confidence. And aside from the work we did, which was really interesting, seeing that progression of people was absolutely amazing. And like I say, I've kept in touch with many of them, and I've really enjoyed knowing them and seeing their continued career progression.
That's true. Moving on to my last aspect, and this is actually this I get conflicting opinions from a lot of engineers. So there are managers who come from a business and a more customer-centric background, and there are managers who come from a more technical background. And I've seen some engineers gel well with the technical background managers, and I've seen people who gel well with more business-oriented managers. What is your take on these two? I wouldn't say categories. Categorization is not the correct word, but these two aspects of managers. And as an engineer, if you want to impress a non-technical stakeholder, be it a manager or a leader, how would you typically go about? Because from a technical mindset, you're always into, okay, I need to fix this piece of code, I need to fix this bug. And at times, non-technical managers might not, again, for the lack of proper choice of words, might not care about the bug or the defect that you're facing. They typically care about the results.
So I'm from a technical background, obviously, personally.
Yeah.
I've been a software engineer for 20 odd years now. I'm happy mostly with a non-technical manager, and I like that because I think that every software engineer from junior through to the CTO should be thinking about the impact on the customer and the value we create. And our customer, our user, our investors don't care whether or not we use Python, C++, Rust. They don't care whether the bug was a memory leak or was technical debt or not. What they care about is, does it solve their problem? Does it create some value for them? So I think the manager that thinks in terms of those is the better manager because they're thinking about what matters, and that's what's going to help us grow. That's what's going to help us create business, creates happy customers, keeps us all in a job and gainfully employed. So stepping that down at every level, I think every person down should be thinking about how does this help the end user? How does this help the customer? So if you're a software engineer and you've got a non-technical manager, think about them and think about the next step up is how do I talk to them in terms that they understand what, technical debt, bugs, cruft, problems with our code, all has an impact on the customer. So don't talk about technical debt. Don't talk about this bugs. Don't talk about whether or not the code's clean. Talk about this has we have an issue and it's going to have an impact on our ability to deliver. If we put 2 weeks into fixing this, we can deliver the next features 4 weeks quicker. If we address this security issue, we protect us from this reputational risk. If we ensure GDPR compliance, we deal with this. We need to do tokenization or privacy so that we comply with the law. So every single one of these has an impact on the business and the customer. So talk in their terms, talk in things that matter to those people. In particular, what does it mean for the customer?
Thanks. A follow-up question to that. I've seen a few managers from a tech background and from a non-tech background, and you feel that managers coming from a tech background get stuck into being more empathetic towards the developers. So, for example, if a developer or an engineer comes to me, if I go into management probably, and tell me that, okay, I'm facing this issue, etc., and it will take a couple of days more. As a manager from a technical background, being more empathetic to that fact and saying, okay, I know the problems you're facing, and you can take those couple of days, as opposed to, no, I want it today. I don't care what you're facing. You feel technical managers lack that kind of, I wouldn't say lack, technical managers have more empathy towards engineers, or the other way around is non-tech managers lack that empathy towards the software engineers?
I think that's a great question. And I think it's because it's so much easier to be empathetic with people that we understand. And it's so much easier to convey that empathy to people understand. So as a technical manager, it's far easier to convey our empathy to people. As a non-technical manager, it's maybe harder to relate, harder to actually feel empathetic, and even harder then to communicate that empathy. So I think it's not that a manager should be technical, but a non-technical manager probably has to work harder. And maybe many don't work hard enough to convey that empathy and to really understand and to build that empathetic relationship with their teams. So perhaps that's a really good lesson that we can leave from this for non-technical managers. Build empathy and really double down on empathy with your technical team, because that's going to overcome not having those technical skills and not coming from a technical background.
Yes, but do you think that that is a drawback for technical managers?
Being empathetic to them,
Yeah.
I think
Again,
it
right?
can
I mean,
be. I think it
probably
can
a
be.
bit controversial. Sorry, go ahead.
No, no. I think you're right. It potentially is controversial, and yes, I think it can be, because an awful lot of us who are technical, we don't think of the big picture. We don't think of the business. I mean, certainly when I started as a software engineer, I wanted to write great code. I wanted to really learn the ins and outs of C++ and be a C++ guru. I didn't care outside of that. But for a variety of reasons, I started my own business. When I started my own business, I had to start worrying about things of, where does the sale come from? How do I get the customer to pay? How do I get a happy customer? How do I manage the cash flow? How do I pay my contractors and my staff? When you have to start thinking about those things too, then it gives you the bigger picture view. And I think that experience has helped me kind of bridge the two and understand both sides of the equation. I think as we said, that a non-technical manager can't reach that empathy, maybe a technical manager can't have that empathy with the business the other way and understand and put themselves a bit more in the place of sales and marketing and the customer relationships and understand that. So I also often make the case that everybody should learn to sell. And if you're progressing to a senior level, you should try and spend some time with customer relations, try and spend some time with sales guys and see what your customers say, see what your customers experience with using the product or using your service, and start to get that empathy with users and with the people who are dealing with the users day to day.
That was great insights. So we'll stop here, John. It was great having you on this episode. Thanks again for coming.
Thank you. Been a pleasure.